They say the most profound changes in life come when we least expect them. On a night when thunder shook the Texas sky and rain lashed against the windows of Red River Ranch, fate knocked on Western Cade's door. There she stood, a woman named Callie, drenched to the bone, clutching a baby to her chest. Her eyes held secrets darker than the storm clouds above, and her words would change everything. He's not yours, but he needs you. For a man who'd sworn never to let anyone past his gates again, this moment would test every wall he'd built around his heart. The baby's eyes held an echo of something he thought he'd buried long ago, along with the memory of his brother. What connection could this mysterious woman have to the tragedy that tore the Cade family apart 15 years ago? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Weston's boots left wet marks on the hardwood as he strode to his study, the woman's words echoing in his mind. Behind the old mahogany desk, he pulled out a leather-bound portfolio, one he hadn't touched in 15 years. Inside, yellowed, with age but preserved in plastic, lay the newspaper clipping that had haunted his dreams. Tragic accident claims, young rancher's life. Cade brothers' partnership ends in heartbreak. The article's words blurred before his eyes as memories flooded back. That cursed night, Luke had been rushing home from Houston, eager to share news about some woman he'd met. One patch of black ice, one split second, and everything changed. The investigation revealed no foul play, just cruel fate and poor timing, but the guilt, the crushing weight of their last argument about Luke's wild ways, that had driven Weston to transform Red River Ranch into his fortress of solitude, rain, pelted against the window, drawing his attention to the present. Down the hall, he could hear the baby's soft coos mixing with Callie's gentle shushing. Something about those sounds pierced the carefully constructed walls around his heart, reminding him of Sunday dinners and laughter that once filled these rooms. Mrs. Rodriguez, his housekeeper of 20 years, appeared in the doorway. Her weathered face held concern as she watched him return the portfolio to its drawer. "Senor Cade, the guest room is ready. I've left out some of your mother's old nightgowns for the young lady." "Thank you, Maria." His voice was gruff with emotion. "Make sure they have everything they need. And you, what do you need, mijo?" The tenderness in her voice nearly undid him. Weston turned to the window, his reflection ghostly against the storm-dark glass. At 45, his face had grown harder, more lined than Luke's would ever be. The successful ranching empire he'd built meant nothing on nights like this, when the past refused to stay buried. "What I need," he said quietly, "is to understand. Why this woman chose my door? Of all the ranches in Texas, why here?" Maria's silence spoke volumes. They both knew there had to be more to the story. The baby, something in those innocent eyes had struck him like lightning. They were Cade eyes, with that same distinctive gold ring around the iris that his brother had. But Luke was gone, had been gone for 15 years, and Weston had sworn an oath at his grave. No more taking in strays, no more trying to save everyone like their father had taught them. The ranch was a business now, not a sanctuary. Thunder cracked overhead, and somewhere in the house, the baby began to cry. Weston's hands clenched at his sides, muscle memory from years of restraining himself from reaching out, from caring. "The storm's getting worse," Maria observed. "God has a way of bringing people together when they need each other most." Weston scoffed softly. "Or perhaps the devil does, to remind us of our failures." But even as he said it, he knew he wouldn't. Turn them out. Not in this weather, not with those eyes haunting him. One night of shelter wouldn't break his rules. Tomorrow he'd get answers. Tomorrow he'd figure out what connection this woman had to his brother, if any. For tonight, though, he'd do what Luke would have done, offer sanctuary from the storm. It was the least he could do to honor his brother's memory, even if every act of kindness felt like reopening an old wound. As Maria's footsteps faded down the hall, Weston pulled out his phone and dialed his ranch foreman. "Tom, I need you to run a background check first thing tomorrow. Name's Callie. That's all I've got for now. And Tom, be discreet about it. Very discreet." He ended the call and stared at the newspaper clipping one last time before locking it away. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside Red River Ranch, something long dormant was stirring back to life. Whether Weston Cade was ready for it or not, midnight found Weston still awake, nursing a glass of bourbon in the kitchen when soft footsteps caught his attention. Callie appeared in the doorway, wearing his mother's old nightgown, looking impossibly young and vulnerable in the dim light. In her arms, she clutched not the baby, but a worn teddy bear. "He's finally asleep," she said softly, hovering uncertainly. At the threshold, "Mrs. Rodriguez helped me set up the portable crib." Weston nodded, his eyes fixed on the teddy bear. Something about it seemed familiar. The way its ear was slightly torn, the distinctive pattern on its worn belly. When Callie shifted her weight, he caught sight of initials embroidered on the bear's foot. LC. His heart stopped. LC. Luke Cade. "That bear," he said, his voice rougher than intended. "Where did you get it?" Callie's fingers tightened around the stuffed animal. "It was a gift for the baby." Her eyes wouldn't quite meet his. Lightning illuminated the kitchen, casting harsh shadows across their faces. In that brief flash, Weston saw fear flicker across Callie's features. Not of him, but of something else. Something that had driven her to his door on this stormy night. "Mrs. Rodriguez said you've lived here alone for 15 years, she ventured, changing the subject. "This place, it must get lonely. The ranch keeps me busy." His reply was automatic, practiced. 2,000 acres don't manage themselves. And the empty rooms, do they manage themselves too? There was no judgment in her voice, only a sad understanding that made him uncomfortable. Before he could respond, a distant cry echoed down the hallway. "The baby!" Callie moved to go, but Weston surprised himself by standing first. "I'll check on him." Her startled expression mirrored his own internal confusion. Yet his feet carried him down the hall to the guest room, where the portable crib stood, in a pool of soft lamplight. The baby, he still didn't know his name, was squirming, little face scrunched in distress. Without thinking, Weston reached down and lifted him. The weight felt foreign, yet natural in his arms, stirring memories of holding Luke when they were children, when their age gap of 5 years had made him feel like a third parent rather than just a brother. "Shh, little man," he murmured, swaying. "Gently. The storm can't hurt you here." The baby's eyes opened, fixing on him with that unsettling familiarity. Those eyes, Luke's eyes, seemed to peer straight through the carefully constructed walls around his heart. Callie appeared in the doorway, still clutching the bear. She watched them with an expression Weston couldn't quite read. "His name is Jack," she said quietly. "After my father, Jack. A solid name, a rancher's name. The kind of name that belonged on a property like Red River Ranch." Weston pushed the thought away as quickly as it came. "He likes you," Callie observed, moving closer. "He doesn't usually take to strangers." "Cade men have a way with children," Weston said without thinking, then immediately regretted it as tension filled the air. Thunder rolled again, but Jack remained calm in his arms, one tiny hand gripping Weston's shirt. The teddy bear in Callie's arms seemed to watch them all, its glass eyes reflecting lamplight, its embroidered initials burning questions into the night. "You should both try to get some sleep," Weston said finally, carefully laying Jack back in the crib. Tomorrow. "You'll want answers," Callie finished for him. "I know, but some answers come with prices, Mr. Cade. Some truths are better left buried." "Not in my house," he replied firmly. "Not with that bear in your hands." She flinched slightly but held her ground. "Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is let the past rest." "The past doesn't rest, Miss Callie. It just waits for the right storm to blow it back into our lives." With that, he left the room, her eyes following him like phantom touches in the dark. Back in his study, Weston opened his laptop and typed LC Teddy Bear into his private investigation firm's secure message system. Someone would have answers. About that bear. About why a woman he'd never met had his dead brother's childhood toy. Outside, the storm showed no signs of letting up, its fury matching the turbulence in his heart. Sleep would not come easy tonight, not with ghosts walking, his halls and secrets hiding behind innocent eyes. Dawn broke over Red River Ranch, the storm's aftermath, leaving everything rain-washed and new. In the kitchen, Weston stood before his mother's recipe box, a worn index card in his hand. Margaret Cade's famous Sunday morning pancakes was written in his mother's elegant script, with a note at the bottom, "The secret ingredient is love. Make them for someone special." He'd found himself pulling out the recipe before he could think better of it. The sound of Callie and Jack stirring upstairs had awakened something long dormant. A muscle memory of family breakfasts, of his mother's insistence that important. Conversations happened better over good food. Mrs. Rodriguez arrived early, taking one look at the recipe card and smiling knowingly. "Your mama would be proud," she said, reaching for the cast-iron griddle. "It's just breakfast," he muttered, but they both knew it wasn't. The kitchen filled with familiar scents as Tom, his foreman, appeared at the back door. One look from Weston sent him around to the study entrance instead. Whatever information he'd found about Callie would have to wait. When Callie entered the kitchen with Jack, she stopped short at the domestic scene. The baby was alert, taking in the warm kitchen with curious eyes, those Cade eyes that seemed to track Weston's every move. "Hope you're hungry?" Weston said gruffly, sliding a plate of golden pancakes across the counter. "My mother's recipe. It's been a long time since anyone cooked for us." Callie's voice was soft as she settled Jack in the high chair Mrs. Rodriguez had mysteriously produced from storage. "Thank you." Morning light streamed through the windows, highlighting the dark circles under her eyes, the worry lines around her mouth. She couldn't be more than 30, Weston realized, yet she carried herself like someone who'd lived several lifetimes of trouble. "My ranch hands saw your car down by the gate," he said, keeping his tone casual. "Tom's having it brought. Up to the garage. Batteries dead from the lights being left on." Callie's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "I can call a mechanic. Already taken care of. But it'll be a few days for parts." He watched her carefully. "Gives us time to talk about that bear, Mr. Cade." "Weston," he corrected. "If you're eating my mother's pancakes, it's Weston." She smiled despite herself, and for a moment he glimpsed the woman she might have been without fear riding her shoulders. "These are wonderful," she said clearly, deflecting. "Your mother must have been an amazing cook." She was amazing at everything. He found himself reaching for the recipe card again, running his thumb over the worn edges. "She would have loved—" He stopped himself, but Callie finished the thought. "Having a baby in the house again? Having life in the house again." He amended. "After Luke died, everything just stopped." Jack chose that moment to grab for Weston's finger as he passed, tiny hand wrapping around weathered skin with surprising strength. The gesture, so innocent and trusting, sent a jolt through Weston's carefully maintained defenses. "He does that with people he likes," Callie said quietly. "He's a good judge of character." "Like his mother?" Weston met her eyes steadily. "Because I'm starting to think you are too. You chose this ranch for a reason, Callie. The bear, those eyes of his. You knew exactly where you were coming when you showed up last night." Color drained from her face, but before she could respond, Tom appeared in the doorway, his expression urgent. "Boss, that information you wanted, you need to see this. Now." Weston rose, torn between the pull of answers and the peculiar reluctance to break this moment of almost peace. "We're not finished here," he told Callie. "No," she agreed, something like resignation in her voice. "But after you read whatever's in that folder, you might wish we were." He paused in the doorway, looking back at the scene that could have been from any normal family's morning. Mother and child in a sunlit kitchen, his mother's recipe card propped against the syrup bottle, Mrs. Rodriguez humming as she worked. For one heartbeat, he let himself want it. Then he followed Tom to his study, where the truth about Callie and possibly his brother's last secrets waited to shatter this fragile morning peace. The leather-bound photo album sat heavy in Weston's lap as Tom laid out the facts. Black and white memories stared up at him. Luke's high school graduation, their parents' last Christmas, the day they'd inherited the ranch. But it was a photo he'd never seen before, tucked into the back sleeve, that stopped his breath. Luke, smiling wider than Weston remembered ever seeing, with his arm around a much younger Callie. The Houston skyline stretched behind them. The date stamp 3 weeks before the accident. She was a waitress at some upscale restaurant in Houston, Tom explained, his voice carefully neutral. According to my sources, Luke was there every Friday night for 2 months before he died. Weston's fingers traced the edge of the photo. She would have been, what, 20? 19. Tom cleared his throat. There's more. She disappeared right after the accident, changed her name, moved around a lot, graduated nursing school in Dallas, worked pediatrics. Then, 8 months ago, she suddenly quit her job and started running. Running from what? Not what, who? Tom placed a manila envelope on the desk. Her ex-husband, Carter Phillips. Real piece of work. Old money, bad reputation. They divorced 6 months ago, but he's been tracking her across 3 states. The implications settled like lead in Weston's stomach. The baby, born 7 months ago. Tom's meaning was clear. Timeline fits, boss. If she was with Luke, right. Before, a knock at the study door cut him off. Mrs. Rodriguez entered, her expression troubled. Senor Cade, the young lady is packing to leave. She overheard your foreman's car phone through the garden window. Cursing, Weston grabbed the photo album and strode toward the guest room, his long legs eating up the distance. He found Callie shoving clothes into her bag, tears streaming down her face while Jack watched from the bed, surrounded by pillows. Were you ever going to tell me? His voice was hoarse. About Luke? She froze, then slowly turned to face him. I was 19, she whispered. A girl with big dreams, serving tables to pay for nursing school. He was charming, kind. Said he had a brother who'd love me too. A family ranch where dreams came true. But you never came to the ranch. Never came to his funeral. I was afraid. Her hands twisted together. I just found out I was... But then the accident happened, and I lost everything. The baby, Luke, my courage. I ran away, tried to build a new life. Weston opened the photo album, found the hidden picture. And now, Carter, he's not Jack's father, but he thinks he has rights to him because we were married when Jack was born. He has judges in his pocket, police on his payroll. I had nowhere else to go. Her eyes pleaded with him. Luke always said if I ever needed help, find his brother. Said you were the most honorable man he'd ever known. A sound from Jack drew their attention. The baby had pulled himself up, reaching for the photo album with curious hands. Looking at him now, Weston saw not just Luke's eyes, but their mother's smile, their father's determined chin. Carter's dangerous, Callie continued softly. I shouldn't have come. Shouldn't have involved you. But Luke, her voice broke. Luke said, you'd understand about protecting family. Weston's gaze moved from the photo to Jack, then to Callie. Somewhere in his mind, his mother's voice whispered about breakfast and love and important conversations. Luke's voice joined in, reminding him of promises made in childhood to always protect what mattered. Unpack your bags, he said finally. His voice rough with emotion. You're not going anywhere. Weston, you don't understand. I understand that my brother loved you. I understand that this baby... He swallowed hard. Jack deserves to grow up where he belongs, on this ranch, with family. Carter won't stop. Let him come. Steel entered Weston's voice. He'll learn what happens when someone threatens her. Cade! He set the photo album on the dresser, open to the picture of Luke and Callie. You're home now, both of you. As if in agreement, Jack let out a happy squeal, his tiny hand landing on Luke's smiling face in the photo. Outside, the morning sun broke fully through the storm clouds, casting a golden glow across Red River Ranch. For the first time in 15 years, the house felt alive again. Filled with the kind of love that his mother's recipe card had promised was the secret ingredient to everything that mattered. Evening found Weston in the ranch's old workshop, dust motes dancing in the last rays of sunlight. In his hands, he held a small wooden horse, its surface smooth from years of handling. Luke had carved it during their last summer together, when he'd taken up woodworking as yet another of his passionate hobbies. "I'm making a whole herd," Luke had said, "for the children we'll have someday." Only one horse had ever been completed. The sound of boots on wooden steps pulled Weston from his memories. Callie stood in the doorway, Jack balanced on her hip, both of them covered in what looked suspiciously like cookie dough. "Mrs. Rodriguez is teaching us her secret recipe," she explained, brushing flour from Jack's nose. "Though I think more is wearing it than in the bowl." "She did the same with Luke and me," Weston found himself saying. "Said messy kitchens make happy memories." Jack squirmed in Callie's arms, reaching toward the workbench with determined little hands. The wooden horse seemed to catch his eye, much as it had caught Luke's attention in the craft fair that had inspired him to learn carving. Without thinking too deeply about it, Weston held out the horse. "Your father made this," he told Jack softly. "He had big dreams about filling a nursery with wooden animals." Callie's breath caught as Jack grabbed the horse, immediately bringing it to his mouth for a thorough investigation. "Luke made this?" "That summer before everything. He was always starting new projects, learning new skills. Said a man needed to leave something behind that would last." Weston's throat tightened. "I never knew why he suddenly got so focused on legacy." Understanding dawned in Callie's eyes. "He knew about the pregnancy. That's why he was racing home that night. He'd just gotten my message." The weight of that revelation settled between them like a physical presence. Jack, oblivious to the emotional undertow, happily drooled on his father's handiwork. "He would have been an amazing dad," Callie said softly, watching Jack explore the wooden horse's features with tiny, curious fingers. "He still is." Weston surprised himself with the firmness in his voice. "Through us, through the stories we'll tell Jack, the values we'll teach him. Luke's legacy lives in more than just carved horses." Moving to a shelf, he began clearing space. "This can be Jack's corner, for the toys he'll collect, the treasures he'll find. Every child needs a space in the workshop." Callie stepped closer, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You're really serious about this, aren't you? About us staying?" "Luke chose you," Weston said simply. "He saw something special in you, just like he always saw the best in everyone. I'm starting to understand why." A comfortable silence fell, broken only by Jack's happy babbling as he conducted a serious conversation with his new wooden friend. The workshop felt different somehow, as if the layers of dust and memories were being swept away by new possibilities. "Mrs. Rodriguez mentioned you used to teach woodworking to local kids," Callie ventured. Before I shut everything down?" Weston nodded. "Maybe it's time to open those doors again. Jack will need playmates his age eventually, and his uncle needs to remember there's more to life than just working the ranch." Their eyes met, and for the first time, Weston allowed himself to really look at her, not as Luke's final love or Jack's protective mother, but as a woman who understood loss and redemption as deeply as he did. "You know," he said, turning back to the workbench, "there's still plenty of wood here, and Luke's old carving tools, if you're interested in learning." The smile that bloomed across Callie's face was answer enough. Setting Jack down in a cleared space with his horse, she stepped up to the workbench. "Where do we start?" As Weston began explaining the basics of wood carving, the workshop filled with the kind of warmth it hadn't known in 15 years. Outside, the ranch hands were bringing in the cattle for the night, their distant calls mixing with the familiar sounds of a Texas evening. Inside, surrounded by sawdust and possibility, a new kind of family was taking shape, built from broken pieces, held together by memories of Luke and strengthened by the promise of tomorrow. Tom's truck kicked up dust as it raced down the ranch's main drive, the morning sun barely cresting the horizon. In his hand, he clutched an envelope that had been left at the front gate. Expensive cream-colored paper with a Houston law firm's letterhead clearly visible. Weston was already in the stables when Tom found him, helping one of the hands with a pregnant mare. One look at his foreman's face, and he knew the peaceful routine of the past week was about to shatter. "This was at the gate," Tom said quietly, handing over the envelope. "Along with these." He pulled out his phone, showing photos of fresh tire tracks and cigarette butts. Someone's been watching the ranch. The letter inside was typed on heavy paper, but it was the handwritten note at the bottom that made Weston's jaw clench. "A man's home is his castle, but every castle can be breached. Ask your new house guest about the Hamilton Hotel incident. Some things are worth burning it all down for. CP. Get the security team out here," Weston ordered, his voice low and controlled. "Full perimeter check. And Tom, not a word to Callie about this yet." But secrets had a way of unraveling at Red River Ranch. When Weston returned to the house, he found Callie in his study, staring at a framed photo of Luke, while Jack played with his wooden horse on the rug. "The Hamilton Hotel," she said without turning around. "That's where I was hiding when Carter found us last time. He set fire to the building. 3 people were hospitalized." Her voice cracked. "Just to prove he could get to us." Weston moved to stand beside her, the threatening letter heavy in his pocket. "Why didn't you tell me how dangerous he really is? Because then you might have done the sensible thing and turned us away." She finally looked at him, eyes bright with unshed tears. "The last man who tried to help us lost everything. His business, his reputation. Carter Phillips doesn't just destroy people, he erases them." On the floor, Jack let out a happy squeal, completely unaware of the darkness gathering around his world. The wooden horse fell from his grip, rolling toward Weston's. "Boots, I won't let him hurt either of you," Weston said, picking up the toy. The carved details caught the morning light, Luke's handiwork, a legacy of love and protection. "This is Cade land, has been for 4 generations. We don't scare easy. You don't understand. Carter has connections, money, people everywhere, and I have 2,000 acres of Texas ranch land, 40 loyal hands who've worked this property for decades, and something Carter Phillips will never have." He handed Jack back his horse. "Family worth fighting for." Callie's breath caught at the word family, but before she could respond, Mrs. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway. "Senor Cade, the sheriff is here, says it's urgent." Weston exchanged a look with Callie. "Stay here. Keep the doors locked." The sheriff's weathered face was grim as Weston met him on the front porch. "Got some news you need to hear, Weston. 3 men checked into the motel in town yesterday, driving a black SUV with Houston plates. Been asking questions about the ranch, about your house guests." "Carter's men," Weston growled. "Way they're spending money around town, they're not here for the scenery." The sheriff adjusted his hat. "Like to remind you that my jurisdiction ends at your gate. What happens on private property stays on private property." Weston finished. An understanding as old as Texas itself. Inside he could hear Jack's laughter, mixing with Callie's soft voice, reading a story Mrs. Rodriguez had dug out of storage. The sound stirred something fierce in his chest. A protective instinct he thought had died with Luke. "Tom," he called to his foreman, "get the hands together, all of them. Time they knew what we're up against." His eyes hardened as he watched dust devils dance across the distant pastures. "And call Miguel about those security upgrades we discussed. I want everything in place by sunset." The sheriff nodded approval. "Your brother would be proud, Weston. He always said you were the real backbone of the Cade family." "Luke's not here to protect them," Weston said quietly, "but I am. And Carter. Phillips is about to learn what that means." As if in response to the tension in the air, storm clouds began gathering on the horizon. But this time Weston knew the real storm wasn't coming from the sky. It was coming from Houston in a black SUV with vengeance on its mind. Red River Ranch had weathered storms before, This one would be no different, even if Weston had to become the Thunder himself. The medical laboratory envelope sat unopened on Weston's desk, delivered by courier just as the evening shadows began to lengthen across Red River Ranch. He'd ordered the DNA test the day after Callie arrived, but now, staring at the official seal, he wasn't sure he was ready for its contents. Through the study window, he could see Callie in the garden with Jack, showing him butterflies while Mrs. Rodriguez tended to her tomato plants. The scene was so peaceful, so right, that it made his hands shake as he finally broke the seal. The clinical language blurred before his eyes until he found what he was looking for. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. Luke Cade is the biological father of Jack Phillips. The confirmation hit him like a physical blow. Not because he doubted, those eyes had told the truth from the first moment, but because it made everything so damned official. Jack wasn't just his brother's son. He was the last living piece of Luke Cade. You had him tested. Callie's voice from the doorway wasn't accusatory, just tired. She stood there with Jack on her hip, the setting sun painting them in shades of gold and shadow. I had to know, Weston said quietly, for legal reasons. If we're going to fight Carter, I understand. She moved into the study, letting Jack down to toddle toward his uncle. I would have done the same in your position. Trust needs verification sometimes. The baby reached Weston's chair, pulling himself up with determined little hands. Without thinking, Weston lifted him onto his lap, breathing in that sweet baby smell that had somehow become as familiar as his morning coffee. I knew from the moment I saw him, Weston admitted, showing her the results. But this makes him a Cade in the eyes of the law. Carter Phillips can't touch him now. Callie sank into the leather chair across from his desk, the one Luke used to sprawl in during their late-night planning sessions. There's something else you need to know. Her voice trembled. Something I haven't told you about that night. The night Luke died. Jack played contentedly with Weston's watch chain, unaware of the weight settling in the room. He wasn't just coming to see me about the baby, Callie continued. He was coming to tell you first. Said his big brother deserved to hear it face to face, to understand why he was finally ready to settle down, to be the kind of man Red River Ranch deserved. Weston's throat tightened. The argument we had, our last conversation, I told him he needed to grow up, to stop chasing dreams and face reality. He wanted to prove to you that he had. Tears slipped down Callie's cheeks. The ring was in his pocket when they found him. He was going to propose that weekend, make everything proper. He said you'd taught him what it meant to be honorable. The DNA results crinkled in Weston's grip. All these years, he'd carried the weight of that final argument, never knowing his brother had been racing toward redemption, not running from responsibility. I couldn't face you after, Callie whispered. Couldn't bear to see the same pain I felt reflected in your eyes, so I ran. Lost the first baby in the grief, thought God was punishing me for being a coward. And Jack? Weston's voice was rough. A miracle. 3 years of trying with Carter, nothing. Then one night with Luke. She gave a watery laugh. Like the universe was saving this gift, waiting for the right moment to bring his son home to Red River Ranch. Jack chose that moment to pat Weston's cheek with a sticky hand, drawing both adults' attention. In the fading light, his resemblance to Luke was almost startling. That same mischievous glint, that same unstoppable spirit. He belongs here, Weston said firmly. Both of you do. And tomorrow, we're going to the lawyer in town. I want papers drawn up naming Jack as Luke's legal heir. No more running, no more hiding. Carter Phillips isn't family. Weston stood, shifting Jack to his hip with practiced ease. This is about the Cades now, about making sure Luke's son grows up where he belongs, knowing who he is and where he comes from. He moved to the window, showing Jack the sprawling ranch lands painted in sunset colors. See that, little man? That's your legacy. Your daddy helped build every inch of this place, And your uncle, well, I reckon your uncle's finally remembering what family means. Callie joined them at the window, and Jack immediately reached for her, creating a circle of connection that felt older than time itself. Outside, the ranch hands were lighting the security lights, their golden glow pushing back the gathering. Darkness. "Welcome home, Jack Cade," Weston said softly. "Welcome home." The security monitor's blue glow cast harsh shadows across Weston's face as he reviewed the footage for the third time. 3 men in an unmarked black SUV circling the ranch's perimeter at 2-hour intervals. The timestamp showed 3:47 a.m., the darkest part of night, when even the most vigilant guards might drop their guard. Tom stood behind him, arms crossed. Miguel's system caught them testing the fence lines. "They're looking for blind spots. They won't find any." Weston's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "Not anymore." The camera footage shifted to the main gate, where one of the men had left another message, this time spray-painted across the historic Cade Ranch sign. "Time's running out." A soft gasp from the doorway made both men turn. Callie stood there, in her robe, face pale in the pre-dawn light. "I know that car," she whispered. "That's Marcus, Carter's head of security. The others, they're the ones who set the hotel fire." "Mrs. Rodriguez is with Jack?" Weston asked, already reaching for his phone. Callie nodded. "In the panic room you showed us, but Weston, if Marcus is here himself, then Carter's not far behind." He punched in a number, his jaw set. "Sheriff, those Houston boys just made their first move. Might want to have your deputies keep an eye on the town roads." The sheriff's reply was grim. "Already got 2 cars reported stolen from the motel parking lot. They're building up to something. Let them try." Weston's eyes returned to the security footage, watching the SUV's slow circuit around his land, his home, his family. A quiet knock, and Miguel, the security contractor, entered with a tablet. Motion sensors just picked up movement in the south pasture. Night vision shows they're setting up observation posts. "They're not here to observe," Callie said, her voice shaking. "This is how it started at the hotel. Small threats, testing, defenses, then they struck all at once." Weston moved to her side, his solid presence offering shelter from memories and threats alike. "This isn't some hotel, Callie. This is Red River Ranch. We've got 2,000 acres of land we know better than our own names. 40 hands who can shoot straighter than any hired gun, and something worth protecting." As if on cue, the baby monitor on his desk crackled with Jack's morning babbles, the innocent sounds a stark contrast to the tension in the room. "Sir?" Tom interrupted, pointing to the screen. "They're pulling back." The SUV was indeed retreating, but Weston knew better than to relax. "They'll be back, with reinforcements." He turned to Miguel. "How long to get the rest of the security measures in place?" "The new cameras and sensors are up, electric fence modifications by sunset. But..." Miguel hesitated. "Mr. Phillips's reputation. He's not known for playing by rules. Neither am I. Not anymore." Weston's voice carried the weight of generations of Cade men who defended this land. "Tom, get the hands together. Full briefing. In an hour. Anyone who wants to leave before this gets ugly can do so, with full pay and references." Tom's laugh was sharp. "Boss, these men watched you and Luke grow up. They were here when your daddy passed, when Luke..." He cleared his throat. "That baby up there, he's family to every hand on this ranch. Nobody's walking away." The security footage looped again, showing the vandalized sign. But now, instead of fear, Weston felt a cold certainty settling in his bones. Carter Phillips might have money and connections, but he didn't understand what he was really up against. "Callie," he said softly, "go be with Jack. Let him hear his mama's voice. Things are about to get complicated around here." She touched his arm, brief but meaningful. "Luke always said you were the strongest man he knew. Not because of your fists, but because of your heart. Luke talked too much." Weston muttered, but his eyes were warm as she left. Turning back to the monitors, he watched the sun begin to rise over his land. Somewhere out there, Carter Phillips was planning his next move. thinking he was dealing with just another rancher, just another obstacle to remove. "Miguel, show me the property layouts again. If they want to play cowboys and outlaws..." His smile held no humor. "Let's make sure they understand whose territory they're riding into." The security footage continued its silent vigil, recording the calm before a storm that would change Red River Ranch forever. But this time, when trouble came calling, it would find the Cade family ready and remember why some legacies were worth fighting for. In the chaos of preparing the ranch for siege, Mrs. Rodriguez appeared in Weston's study, holding a dusty leather journal. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed it on his desk. "I found this while moving things to the safe room," she said softly. "It was hidden in Luke's old desk. There's a letter inside, one he never sent." The journal's worn cover bore Luke's initials, tooled into the leather by their father's hands. Inside, tucked between the last written pages, was an envelope, addressed simply, "For Weston, if anything happens." Weston's fingers felt numb as he broke the seal, yellowed with age. His brother's familiar scrawl filled the page. "Dear Weston, if you're reading this, something's gone wrong. I'm writing this the night before I drive home to tell you everything. About Callie, about the baby, about why I've finally grown up enough to understand what you've been trying to teach me all these years. I met her at that fancy restaurant in Houston. You know, the one you always said was too expensive for a working rancher. She was different, West, smart, kind. Reminded me of Mom in the way she could see right through my bull and straight to what mattered. When she told me about the baby, everything changed. All those lectures you gave me about responsibility and legacy, they finally made sense. I'm scared as hell, but for the first time I'm scared of the right things. Not about what I might miss out on, but about what I might lose if I don't step up. There's something else you need to know. I've been investigating Carter Phillips, her ex-fiancé. The man's dangerous, West, the kind of dangerous that doesn't show up in police records because he's got too many friends in high places. Callie doesn't know I know about him, about what he did to her family's business when she broke off their engagement. If anything happens to me, she'll run. She's got enough practice at it thanks to Phillips, but she'll need a place to land eventually. A safe harbor. That's always been your specialty, brother, being the steady one, the safe port in a storm. I know we fought last week. Know you think I'm still that wild kid who needs looking after, but I'm going to prove you wrong. Going to show you I can be the kind of man Red River Ranch deserves, the kind of man our father would be proud of. The ring's in my pocket. Got it from Mom's jeweler in Houston, same one that sized your class ring all those years ago. Callie deserves proper things, done the right way. Just like you always said. If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it home to tell you all this in person. Means I didn't get to see your face when you realized your little brother finally grew up. Means I'm counting on you to be what you've always been, the backbone of this family, the man who makes things right. Take care of them, West. Take care of my girl and my baby. Show my child what it means to be a Cade. And maybe, somewhere along the way, let them take care of you, too. You've carried enough weight alone. Remember what Dad used to say? A Cade never stands alone. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. It's not about being strong enough to stand alone. It's about being strong enough to stand together. I love you, big brother. Sorry for all the gray hairs I gave you. Sorry if I'm giving you one last worry now. Keep them safe. Keep them close. And for God's sake, learn to smile again. My kid's going to need to know their Uncle Weston has a heart under all that granite. Your brother, Luke. The letter blurred in Weston's hands. Outside his study window, he could see Callie walking with Jack in the garden, pointing out butterflies. While two ranch hands kept careful watch, his brother's last words seemed to hang in the air, a final request that had taken 15 years to fulfill. Mrs. Rodriguez touched his shoulder gently. He knew, mijijo. He knew you would be here when they needed you. I should have known about Phillips back then, Weston said roughly. Should have protected them sooner. You're protecting them now. Her voice was firm. And Luke, he's helping too in his way. sending them home when they needed it most. Home. The word echoed in his chest as he watched Jack toddle after a butterfly, Callie's laughter carrying through the window. His brother's last letter had finally completed the circle, bringing the past and present together in a way that demanded action. Carefully folding the letter, Weston placed it in his desk drawer. There would be time for memories later. Right. Now he had a promise to keep. To his brother, to his family, to himself. "Maria," he said quietly, "get everyone inside. It's time to show Carter Phillips what it means to threaten a Cade." The ranch deed lay spread across Weston's desk, its aged parchment protected by glass, a reminder of 4 generations of Cade stewardship. But it was the handwritten note in the margin that caught the lawyer's attention. "This land bears witness to our promises." "Your father's handwriting," Henry Matthews said, adjusting his reading glasses. The old lawyer had served the Cade family for 3 decades. Smart man, adding that legal clause about bloodline inheritance. Makes young Jack's claim ironclad. "Carter Phillips won't care about legal claims," Weston replied, studying the property maps spread around the deed. "He's used to buying or burning whatever stands in his way. Then it's good thing you can't buy Texas pride, and Cade land doesn't burn easy." Henry's weathered face creased with determination. "The trust papers are ready. Once you sign, everything transfers to Jack's name, with you as executor until he's of age. Phillips won't be able to touch this place, not without going through every rancher and judge in 3 counties. Through the window, Weston watched Tom directing the ranch hands in fortifying key positions. The men moved with quiet efficiency, their actions practiced from years of defending the ranch against rustlers and wild animals. Only this time, the threat walked on 2 legs and wore expensive suits. "Miguel reports 3 more vehicles coming in from the north," Tom announced, entering the study. "They're setting up at the Carson property. Old Jake's boy apparently sold them access." Weston's jaw tightened. The Carsons spread bordered Red River's northern pastures, prime position for surveillance. Jake Sr. must be rolling in his grave. "That land was a wedding gift from my father to his daughter." "Times change," Henry observed, but his tone suggested he found the betrayal as distasteful as Weston did. A knock at the door revealed Callie, her face pale but composed. "Jack's down for his nap. Mrs. Rodriguez is with him in the safe room." She moved to Weston's side, studying the maps. "I recognize these names. Marcus has been asking about them in town. They're planning to surround us." "Let them try." Weston's finger traced the property lines his father had walked him along as a boy. "Every wash, every ridge, every hiding spot on this land. We know them all. They're playing our game now. The men are ready," Tom added. Words spread about Jack being Luke's boy. "Every ranch hand here knew your brother, boss. They're taking this personal." Weston nodded, remembering Luke's letter. "A Cade never stands alone." "Henry, get those trust papers filed. Tom, tell Miguel to activate the new security protocols." Callie, he turned to find her already meeting his gaze with understanding. "I won't run," she said firmly. "Not this time. Jack deserves to see at least one battle fought in the open." The deed on the desk seemed to glow in the afternoon light, the promise written in its margins, echoing through generations. Weston placed his hand on the glass, feeling the weight of responsibility and righteousness settling on his shoulders. "Carter Phillips thinks he's dealing with a simple land grab," he said quietly. "Thinks enough money and muscle can solve any problem. But this isn't about property lines or legal documents." His eyes met each of theirs in turn. "This is about family, about promises kept and debts paid." "The men are asking about Luke," Tom said softly, wondering what he'd do. A ghost of a smile touched Weston's lips. Luke would have already been in the saddle, rushing in with more heart than plan. He straightened, authority settling around him like a well-worn coat. "But I'm not Luke. And Carter Phillips is about to learn the difference between a hothead and a strategist." He turned to the maps, his voice taking on the tone that had made Red River Ranch one of the most successful operations in Texas. Tom, get the night riders in position. Henry, make sure every judge from here to Houston knows what's coming. Callie, his voice softened slightly. Go show our boy his father's horse. It's time he met the other part of his legacy. As they left to carry out his orders, Weston remained at the desk, the deed bearing witness to one more Cade, making a stand on this land. Outside, the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the ranch in shades of gold and shadow. Somewhere out there, Carter Phillips was planning his move, confident in his power and influence, but power was one thing. Legacy, the kind written in blood and branded on the heart, that was something else entirely, and Red River Ranch had legacy in spades. The old sheriff's badge caught the lamplight as Weston lifted it from his father's gun cabinet. James Cade had served as county sheriff for 20 years before buying Red River Ranch, and his badge had watched over the study ever since. A reminder that justice and duty ran as deep as ranching in Cade blood. Your grandfather wore this when he faced down the Peterson gang, Weston told Jack, who sat securely in Callie's lap. Said a man didn't need a badge to do what's right, but it helped remind others that right was on his side. The security monitor chimed, drawing their attention. 3 black SUVs had broken from the Carson property, heading toward Red River's main gate. Tom's voice crackled over the radio. They're coming, boss. Marcus is leading them. Weston tucked the badge into his pocket. Callie, get Jack to the safe room. Weston, her voice caught. Carter won't be far behind. He likes to watch while others do his dirty work. Then he'll have quite a show. He touched Jack's cheek gently. Go on. Mrs. Rodriguez is waiting. The sound of vehicles approaching drew him to the front porch. Tom and 6 ranch hands flanked him, rifles held casual but ready. In the darkness beyond the security lights, more of his men waited, positioned exactly where Carter's people wouldn't think to look. The SUVs stopped at the gate, and Marcus stepped out, a tall man in an expensive suit that looked out of place in Texas dust. 4 men flanked him, trying too hard to look like cowboys instead of the hired muscle they were. Evening, Marcus called out, his Houston accent grating in the night air. Hope we're not interrupting dinner. We've already eaten, Weston replied. Evenly? And you're trespassing, Marcus smiled, all city-slick charm with steel underneath. Now that's not very neighborly. Mr. Phillips sent us to discuss a business proposition. He's very interested in acquiring some local property. Red River Ranch isn't for sale. Everything's for sale, Mr. Cade. It's just a matter of price. Marcus gestured, and one of his men brought forward a briefcase. $5 million, cash, plus a generous relocation allowance for any current residents. The badge in Weston's pocket seemed to grow heavier. You seem to be operating under a misconception, Mr. Marcus. This isn't a negotiation. This is me giving you one chance to leave my property before things get complicated. Marcus's smile faded. Mr. Phillips was afraid you might be difficult about this. He wanted me to remind you that accidents happen, tragic ones, like your brother's. He paused meaningfully. Black ice can be so unpredictable, can't it? The revelation hit Weston like a physical blow. The night of Luke's death, it hadn't been an accident. The knowledge must have shone in his face because Marcus's smile returned, sharper now. Oh yes, Mr. Cade. Mr. Phillips has been cleaning up messes for a long time. Your brother was getting too close to something he shouldn't have, just like he's doing now through his son. Tom, Weston said quietly, light 'em up. Floodlights blazed to life, revealing 24 ranch hands emerging from the shadows, their rifles trained on Marcus's men. From behind the SUVs, the distinctive sound of shotguns being racked made the hired muscle spin around to find themselves surrounded by more of Red River's people. Marcus's composed facade cracked slightly. You're making a mistake, Cade. Mr. Phillips killed my brother. Weston's voice carried across the suddenly silent night. And now he's threatening my nephew. So let me be clear. He descended the porch steps slowly, his father's badge gleaming in the security lights. This is Cade land, has been for 4 generations. We've buried our dead here, brought new life into the world here, and by God we'll spill blood here if... That's what it takes to protect our own. He stopped just beyond Marcus's reach. You tell Carter Phillips that Luke Cade's son is under my protection now, and if he wants to test how serious I am about that, he's welcome to come find out personally. You can't win this, Marcus warned, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. Mr. Phillips has resources. I have family, Weston cut him off. And unlike your boss, I know the difference between hired guns and men who die for what they believe in. He smiled, and there was nothing friendly in it. Now get off my land before I decide to ask you more about my brother's death. For a moment, Marcus stood his ground. Then one of his men called out nervously, "There's more of them in the trees, boss." The hired muscle began backing toward their vehicles, their city-trained instincts finally recognizing the danger in these quiet countrymen with generations of Texas steel in their spines. "This isn't over," Marcus promised as he retreated. "No," Weston agreed, his hand touching his father's badge. "But it's going to end differently than you think." He watched until the SUVs disappeared into the night, their taillights swallowed by darkness. Behind him, Tom stepped closer. "They'll be back," his foreman said quietly, "with Phillips himself this time." "Good." Weston turned toward the house where his family waited. "It's time we settled all our debts at once." Dawn found Weston in the ranch's chapel, a small wooden structure his great-grandfather had built for his bride. The Cade family Bible lay open on the simple altar, its pages chronicling generations of births, marriages, and passings. In the margins of Luke's birth announcement, their mother had written, "Two brothers, one heart." Mrs. Rodriguez found him there, her fingers tracing the newest entry, Jack's name, carefully penned in Weston's steady hand. "The town is coming," she said softly. "They've heard about Marcus's visit, about Luke." Outside, trucks and cars were already pulling up to the ranch house. Ranchers, shopkeepers, mechanics, faces Weston had known all his life. Some carried rifles, others boxes of ammunition or supplies. Their wives brought food, their children carried blankets, and first aid kits. Sheriff Davidson's patrol car led another convoy up the drive. "Whole county's talking," he announced, joining Weston on the chapel steps. "About Luke's boy, about Philip's threats. Had to set up a rotation system for all the volunteers." Weston watched as Tom organized the arrivals, directing people with the efficiency of a general preparing for siege. "They don't need to risk themselves for us." "Risk ourselves." A sharp laugh made them turn. Old Joe Martinez, who'd lost his own ranch to a corporate takeover 10 years ago, stepped forward. "Boy, this ain't just about the Cades anymore. This is about everything we've been losing, inch by inch, to men like Phillips, men who think money can buy what we built with generations of sweat and blood." The sheriff nodded grimly. "Got word from Houston. Phillips cleaned out his accounts, called in favors. He's coming with everything he's got." "Good." Weston's hand rested on the family Bible. "Let him see exactly what he's really up against." Inside the ranch house, Callie was helping the women organize supplies. Jack balanced on her hip as she directed traffic with natural grace. The sight of her, finally standing her ground instead of running, stirred something deep in Weston's chest. "Your brother would be proud," Mrs. Rodriguez said, following his gaze, "of all of this, the way you've brought people together, the way you've given them something to stand for. Luke always did have a way of causing trouble that turned into something meaningful," Weston admitted, a smile touching his lips as Jack spotted him and reached out with demanding arms. Taking his nephew, Weston carried him back to the chapel, to the Bible that held their family's story. "See this little man. These are your people, your legacy." He turned to the earliest pages, where the first Cade had recorded his dreams for the ranch. "We're not just fighting for land, we're fighting for every story written in these pages, every promise made on this ground." Sarah Davidson, the sheriff's wife and town librarian, appeared in the doorway. "Weston, we found something in the county records." She held out a stack of papers, her hands trembling slightly. "About Carter Phillips, about what really happened 15 years ago." The documents told a story that made Weston's blood run cold. Phillips had been systematically destroying small ranches across Texas, using accidents and arson to drive prices down before swooping in to buy the land. Luke had stumbled onto the pattern while researching Phillips's background after meeting Callie. The hotel fire wasn't the first, Sarah explained. We found dozens of similar cases, all traced back to Phillips's shell companies. Luke was gathering evidence, planning to take it to the state authorities. That's why they killed him, Weston said softly, holding Jack closer. He was trying to protect more than just Callie. He was trying to protect all of us. The chapel filled with morning light, dust motes dancing like memories in the beams. Weston carried Jack back to the Bible, adding a note beneath his name. Son of Luke Cade, who died protecting what was right, heir to Red River Ranch and all the promises it holds. Outside, more vehicles were arriving. Ranchers from as far as 3 counties away, their faces set with determination. This wasn't just about one family anymore. It was about taking a stand against the slow erosion of everything they held dear. Your daddy started something, Weston told Jack, who solemnly patted the Bible's weathered pages. And we're going to finish it. All of us, together. Mrs. Rodriguez lit a candle on the altar, her prayers mixing with the sounds of preparation outside. Weston added his own silent promise to the generations of Cade prayers held in these walls, that Jack would grow up knowing not just the love of family, but the strength of community, the power of standing together against whatever darkness might come. Carter Phillips was coming with money and mercenaries, but Red River Ranch would meet him with something far stronger. A fellowship forged by generations of shared lives, shared struggles, and shared determination to protect what mattered most. The gold wedding ring caught the afternoon light as Weston held it up. His mother's ring, the one Luke had gotten sized in Houston, the one found in his pocket after the crash. Mrs. Rodriguez had kept it safe all these years, waiting for the right moment. Luke wanted you to have this, Weston told Callie, watching. Her eyes filled with tears. He was coming home to tell me about you, about the baby, about his plans for making things right. Sir, Tom's voice cracked over the radio. Multiple vehicles approaching from the north. Phillips is leading them. Callie's fingers closed around the ring as Weston moved to the window. A convoy of black SUVs and luxury cars was approaching, throwing up dust clouds against the Texas sky. At their head, a silver Bentley drove with the arrogant confidence of a man used to getting his way. Get to the safe room, Weston said quietly. Keep our boy close. But Callie stood her ground, Luke's ring now on her finger. No, I'm done running. From Carter Phillips, Luke died trying to expose him. It's time I honored that courage. Outside, the ranch had transformed into a fortress. Local law enforcement mixed with ranch hands, their vehicles creating a defensive perimeter. Armed men stood ready on the roof and behind hay bales. The sheriff himself flanked Weston as he walked onto the porch, every inch the Texas rancher, defending his land. The Bentley stopped, and Carter Phillips emerged, tall, expensively dressed, his silver hair and tailored suit incongruous against the ranch backdrop. His smile was practiced, pleasant, and utterly cold. Mr. Cade, he called out as if arriving for a social visit. I see you've gathered quite a welcoming committee. This is private property, Phillips. You're not welcome here. Private property? Carter's laugh was soft. Everything has a price, Mr. Cade. Your brother learned that the hard way. The admission hung in the air like gun smoke. Behind Carter, Marcus and at least 20 men spread out. A mix of suits and hired muscle, all armed, all watching the standoff with predatory focus. We found Luke's evidence, Weston said, his voice carrying across the yard. All of it. The pattern of mysterious accidents, the forced sales, the paper trail leading back to your shell companies. The state attorney general has it now. For the first time, Carter's smile slipped. You're bluffing. Luke was thorough. Weston's hand touched his father's badge, still in his pocket. He learned that from me. Just like he learned about protecting what matters, no matter the cost. Then he learned poorly, Carter snarled, mask finally cracking. Because I'm not leaving without my son. He was never yours. Callie's voice rang out as she stepped onto the porch, Jack in her arms. The setting sun caught Luke's ring on her finger, making it flame like a beacon. And you knew that, knew I was carrying Luke's child when you forced me to marry you, knew controlling his son would let you control. The largest ranch in the county, Carter's face twisted. You think these toy soldiers can stop me? I own judges, police chiefs, but you don't own Texas. The sheriff's voice was cold. And out here, Mr. Phillips, your kind of money doesn't buy the right kind of loyalty. As if to prove his point, trucks roared to life all around the perimeter. More ranchers emerged from behind buildings, weapons ready. The ranch hands moved with military precision, years of working cattle drives translating seamlessly into tactical advantage. Last chance, Weston said quietly. Leave now. Never come near my family again. The evidence goes public only if you force our hand. Carter's response was a sharp gesture to his men, but as they reached for weapons, the sound of helicopters filled the air. State police choppers appeared over the ridge, spotlights cutting through the dust. Carter Phillips, a voice boomed over loudspeakers. This is the Texas Rangers. We have warrants for your arrest on multiple charges of conspiracy and murder. Stand down or we will open fire. The change that came over Carter's face was almost beautiful. The slow realization that all his money, all his power, meant nothing against the combined strength of family and justice. You've lost everything, Callie said softly, Luke's ring gleaming as she held Jack closer. Just like you. Made so many others lose everything. The difference is, we know how to rebuild. We know what really matters. The Rangers dropped from their helicopters as Carter's men began throwing down weapons. Marcus tried to run, but was caught by 3 ranch hands who'd been waiting for exactly that. The silver-haired devil himself stood frozen, watching his empire crumble in a Texas sunset. As the Rangers approached with handcuffs, Weston felt the weight of generations lift from his shoulders. Luke's last battle was finally won. His son was safe, his love vindicated. Take them away, Weston told the Rangers. This is private property. His eyes met Carter's with quiet triumph. And some things really aren't for sale. The tiny cowboy. Boots sat on Weston's desk, their hand-tooled leather gleaming in the morning light. Custom-made by the same craftsman who'd made Luke's first pair, they bore the Cade brand and Jack's initials, a testament to heritage and hope intertwined. 3 weeks had passed since Carter Phillips's arrest. The ranch had settled back into its rhythms, though now those rhythms included Jack's laughter echoing through halls that had been silent too long, and Callie's gentle presence bringing life back to forgotten corners. They're perfect, Callie said from the doorway, watching Weston trace the tooling with careful fingers. But isn't he a little young for real boots? You're never too young to know where you belong. Weston smiled, remembering his own first pair, the pride in his father's eyes. Besides, he'll need them for the celebration tonight. The ranch was preparing for its first big gathering since the showdown. Not just a celebration of victory, but a homecoming. For Jack, for Callie, for the very soul of Red River Ranch. The whole county would be there, drawn together by bonds stronger than blood. The reporters are still calling, Callie said, moving to straighten the frames on his desk, photos of Luke, of their parents, and now prominently displayed one of Jack sitting on his first horse, grinning with pure Cade charm. They want the whole story. About Luke's investigation, about Carter's arrest, about how a small ranch community brought down a corrupt empire. Let them wait, Weston stood, lifting Jack's boots. Some stories belong to family first. They walked together to the nursery, Luke's old room, now transformed with love and memory into a space for his son. Jack was awake in his crib, practicing his new favorite skill of pulling himself up, his eyes bright with mischief. Look here, cowboy, Weston said, kneeling beside him. Your first real boots. Your daddy wore ones just like these. Jack reached for them with characteristic determination, the same look Luke used to get when facing a challenge. The boots were a perfect fit, as if measuring his father's baby feet all those years ago had somehow prepared the old craftsman for this moment. "Mrs. Rodriguez says he's just like Luke," Callie said softly, watching Jack admire his new footwear. "The way he watches everything, how he never gives up until he gets what he wants." "He's got your strength too," Weston observed. "Your grace under pressure." Outside, they could hear the preparations beginning. Tom directing the setup of tables and lights, Mrs. Rodriguez orchestrating an army of local women in the kitchen, ranch hands stringing lanterns across the yard. The community that had stood together in battle now gathered to celebrate their shared victory. Jack took his first stumbling steps in his new boots, tiny hands gripping their fingers for balance. Together, they guided him to the window where the late afternoon sun painted Red River Ranch in shades of gold and promise. "The state attorney general called again," Weston said, watching his nephew point excitedly at the horses in the paddock. "Philip's entire network is unraveling. Luke's evidence was even more extensive than we realized. He was protecting more than just you. He was trying to save every small ranch in Texas from corporate raiders like Carter." Callie's hand found his, squeezing gently. "He would be proud of all of this, of how you've helped heal not just his son, but an entire community." "We all did it together," Weston corrected, thinking of the unified stand their neighbors had taken. "Just like Luke always said we should." A knock at the door revealed Mrs. Rodriguez, her face alight with joy. "The guests are arriving, mi familia. And wait until you see what the ladies have prepared. Enough food for 3 counties." Jack's boots clumped determinedly across the hardwood as he headed for the door, already drawn by the sounds of gathering celebration. His confidence in his new footwear growing with each step, just as his place in this family, this community, grew stronger every day. "You know," Callie said, watching him go, "I used to dream about this when I was running, scared and alone, about finding a place where Jack could grow up safe, loved, surrounded by people who'd stand together against any storm." "Dreams have a way of coming true on this ranch," Weston replied, thinking of all the hopes and prayers written in the family Bible downstairs, especially the ones worth fighting for. Together they followed Jack's determined march toward the gathering celebration, his new boots marking each step with the sound of belonging. Outside, the Texas evening was painting the sky in brilliant colors, as if nature itself was celebrating this moment of healing, of family found and legacy secured. Red River Ranch was whole again, its heart beating strong with the rhythm of Tiny, boots on ancient floors, and the laughter of a child who would grow up knowing exactly where he belonged. The adoption papers lay pristine on Henry Matthews' polished desk, their crisp legal language somehow inadequate to capture the magnitude of what they represented. Weston stood at the window of the lawyer's office, watching Callie in the garden below as she showed Jack a butterfly, Luke's ring catching the morning light. "It's all here," Henry said, his voice gentle with understanding. "Legal guardianship. Transferring to you both, you as uncle by blood, Callie as mother. The Cade name officially restored to Jack's birth certificate, and..." He paused, pulling out one more document. "The marriage license, if you're both ready." Weston's hands weren't quite steady as he turned from the window. 6 months had passed since Carter Phillips's arrest. Months filled with healing, growth, and the slow, careful building of something neither he nor Callie had dared to name until now. "Luke would approve," Henry added softly, touching the adoption papers. "He always said you were the best man he knew, that any child would be blessed to have you as a father." "I'm not replacing Luke," Weston said quickly, an old fear surfacing. "No," came Callie's voice from the doorway. "You're honoring him by loving his son, by helping me become more than just someone running scared." She moved to stand beside him, her strength evident in every step. Gone was the desperate woman who'd arrived in a storm. In her place stood someone who knew exactly where she belonged. "The ranch hands are placing bets, you know," she continued, a smile playing at her lips, "on whether you'll actually wear a tie for the ceremony. Mrs. Rodriguez is already planning the menu, and Tom's ordered enough beer to float a battleship." "They know?" Weston asked, surprised. "Mi hijo." Mrs. Rodriguez appeared behind Callie. Jack balanced on her hip. "Everyone has known since the day you first showed Jack how to sit a horse. We were just waiting for you two to catch up." Jack reached for Weston with the complete confidence of a child who had never doubted his place in this man's heart. His new boots, already scuffed from determined exploration of every corner of the ranch, kicked happily as Weston took him. "See these papers, little man." Weston held him close, breathing in the sweet mixture of baby shampoo and morning air. "These say what we already know in our hearts, that you're a Cade, through and through, that you have a home that no one can ever take away. And a family," Callie added, her hand finding Weston's. "One that's big enough to hold all of us, those here and those watching from above." Henry cleared his throat, clearly emotional, as he prepared the pen. The adoption papers first, then the marriage license. Tom's waiting outside as witness, and Judge Martinez cleared his afternoon calendar for the civil ceremony. "You planned all this?" Weston asked Callie, amazed. "We all did. Because some things shouldn't wait." She touched Luke's ring, now paired, with a simple engagement band Weston had given her last month. "Life has taught us that much." The adoption papers felt warm under Weston's hand as he signed, each stroke of the pen cementing what his heart had known since that stormy night. Callie's signature joined his, her tears falling freely now. "John Lucas Cade," Henry read from the amended birth certificate, "son of Luke Cade and Callie Morrison Cade, under the legal guardianship of Weston James Cade, and soon Mrs. Rodriguez," added with a knowing smile, "just son of the Cades, as it should be." The marriage license was next, a promise of tomorrow laid beside the adoption papers that had secured today. Outside the office window, Red River Ranch spread toward the horizon, its fields green with spring promise. "Your brother came to me the week before he died," Henry said suddenly, pulling out an old envelope. "Had me draw up papers to make you his executor, his heir, and his choice for guardian if anything ever happened to him. He knew even then what kind of man you were." The envelope contained one more document, Luke's last will, with a handwritten note, paperclipped to the front. "Because some legacies are about more than land and money. Take care of them, big brother. Love them like I know you can." Jack patted Weston's cheek, demanding attention in that way that never failed to remind them all of Luke. His eyes, those Cade eyes that had started this whole journey, were bright with trust and love. "Ready?" Callie asked softly, holding out her hand. Weston looked at the papers that would make official what his heart had known for months. At his nephew, no, his son, who had brought life back to an empty house. At the woman who had run through a storm and found her way home. "Ready," he answered, taking her hand. "Let's make this family official." Behind them, Mrs. Rodriguez was already on her phone, setting the celebration in motion. Beyond the window, Red River Ranch waited to welcome its newly official family home, where butterflies danced, horses grazed, and the legacy of love lived on in every sunrise. The new family portrait hung in the great room of Red River Ranch, catching the light of a perfect Texas morning. Taken on Jack's second birthday, it showed the boy perched proudly on his first pony, Weston and Callie on either side, their faces bright with the kind of joy that comes from dreams realized. But it was the older photo beside it that drew Weston's attention today. Luke's last Christmas at the ranch, his smile somehow knowing, as if he'd seen this future even then. "He's asking for his boots again," Callie said, coming up behind him. Her hand rested unconsciously on her growing belly, their second miracle due in spring. "Says he can't help with the new foal without proper ranch wear, like father, like a son." Weston smiled, remembering Luke's similar determination at that age. Both of them. A year had passed since they'd made their family official. Red River Ranch had flourished, its reputation growing not just for its cattle operation, but for the community support program they'd established in Luke's name, helping small ranchers stand against corporate takeovers, offering legal aid and financial guidance to preserve Texas's ranching heritage. The sound of tiny boots on hardwood announced Jack's arrival, his toy rope dragging behind him. "Papa, the baby horse is waiting." Weston swept him up, breathing in the scent of sunshine and childhood that seemed to follow him everywhere. "Hold on there, cowboy. What's the first rule of ranch work?" "Family breakfast first," Jack recited, grinning with Luke's unmistakable charm. "Mama says it's where all good things start." Through the window, they could see Mrs. Rodriguez directing the ranch hands, setting up for tonight's celebration. 1 year since the adoption, since their wedding, since Red River Ranch had become truly whole again. The entire county would be there, just as they had been for every major moment since the showdown with Carter Phillips. The governor's office. "And called again," Callie said, straightening Jack's collar with practiced ease. "They want you to head the new Rural Protection Committee. Said what we did here, standing together against Phillips, should be a model for the whole state. They need to talk to Tom about that," Weston replied. "He's the one who's been traveling, teaching other communities how to organize, how to protect what matters." "Papa," Jack interrupted, his face serious, "can we bring the baby horse a cookie? Uncle Tom says horses like cookies." "After breakfast," Weston promised, carrying him toward the kitchen where Mrs. Rodriguez was orchestrating her usual morning magic. The smell of coffee and fresh biscuits filled the air, mingling with the sweet scent of early roses from Callie's garden. The kitchen table, expanded now to accommodate the growing family, was set with the careful precision that was Mrs. Rodriguez's hallmark. Luke's old place setting remained, a quiet tribute that felt more like inclusion than loss. "These days, the photographer sent more prints," Callie said, pulling an envelope from her pocket, "for the Foundation's new office in Houston." The Luke Cade Rural Heritage Foundation had grown from a simple idea into a force for change, helping preserve the way of life Carter Phillips had tried to destroy. The new family portrait would hang in its headquarters, a reminder of what they were fighting to protect. "Did you see what he captured?" Callie spread the photos out between coffee cups and breakfast plates. "Look at Jack's eyes, pure Luke. But that smile," she touched Weston's arm. "That's all his papa." The photos showed more than just poses. They caught moments. Jack learning to rope with Tom, Callie reading Luke's old stories on the porch, Weston teaching his son the names of stars from the very spot where his father had taught him. Each image a testament to legacy lived rather than simply preserved. "Mama," Jack said around a mouthful of biscuit, "is the new baby going to be a cowboy too?" "Could be a cowgirl, mi angelito." Mrs. Rodriguez winked, refilling coffee cups. "Your Aunt Sarah's already bought her a pair of pink boots, just in case." The morning sun streamed through windows that had once been shuttered against grief, painting the kitchen in shades of hope and possibility. Outside, Red River Ranch was coming alive with another day's work. Horses nickering, cattle lowing, ranch hands calling greetings across the yard. Weston looked at the family portrait again, at the way it captured not just faces, but the very spirit of what they'd built here. Luke's legacy, transformed but undiminished. A family forged from storm and struggle, made stronger by the very forces that had tried to break it. "Papa!" Jack tugged his sleeve. "The baby horse is waiting." "So, she is, son." Weston smiled, tasting the sweetness of that word on his tongue. "So she is." The leather-bound journal lay open on Weston's desk, its pages filled with Callie's elegant handwriting. "The Story of Red River Ranch," the title page read. "A legacy of love and courage." She'd started writing it the day they'd made their family. Official, determined that their children would know every chapter of their heritage. "Reading it again?" Callie asked from the doorway, their newborn daughter cradled against her shoulder. Little Lucy Rose, named for Luke and Weston's mother, blinked sleepily in the soft evening light. Jack asked about the storm tonight. Weston said, touching the first page where Callie had described that desperate evening 2 years ago. Wanted to know if I was scared when you arrived. Were you? She settled into Luke's old chair, now well worn from her countless hours of writing. In the study. Terrified, he admitted, watching his daughter's tiny fingers curl around her mother's necklace. Not of you, but of hoping again, of letting love back in. Through the open window came the sound of Jack's laughter mixing with Tom's patient instructions. Evening rope practice, a ritual as sacred as Sunday services. The boy had his father's natural seat on a horse and his uncle's steady hands, a living bridge between past and present. I finished the last chapter today, Callie said, nodding toward the journal. About Lucy's arrival, about how the whole county showed up with food and gifts, about how Mrs. Rodriguez declared she needed 2 rocking chairs on the porch now, 1 for each grandbaby. Weston smiled, remembering the elderly housekeepers. Tears of joy when they'd told her the baby would carry Rose as a middle name. Family wasn't always about blood, as Red River Ranch had proven time and again. The journal's final pages caught the setting sun, the ink still fresh where Callie had written their newest chapter. But it was her dedication on the last page that caught his eye. To Luke, who loved bigger than Texas itself, to Weston, who taught us all how to be brave, and to our children, who will always know they are part of a story greater than themselves. The Foundation office called, he said, gathering his thoughts. Philip's last appeal was denied. Everything he stole is being returned to the families he hurt. Luke's evidence is still helping people, even now. He would have loved that. Callie's voice was soft with memory, almost as much as he would have loved this. She nodded toward the window where Jack had finally mastered the loop Tom was teaching him, his whoop of triumph, pure Cade pride. Lucy stirred at the sound of her brother's voice, her eyes, storm grey like her grandmother's, opening to take in the study's familiar warmth. Sometimes, Weston said, taking his daughter with practiced ease, I think he does see it. That night you arrived, it wasn't just desperation that brought you here. It was Luke making sure his family found its way home. Callie rose, moving to stand beside them at the window. Below, Jack was demonstrating his new skill for Mrs. Rodriguez, who applauded with genuine delight. The setting sun painted Red River Ranch in shades of gold and promise, the same light that had welcomed generations of Cade's home. That's why I wrote it all down, she said, touching the journal. Every storm, every triumph, every moment of grace. So they'll know they're part of something unbreakable, a legacy of love that's stronger than any force that tries to tear it apart. Lucy's small hand found her father's finger, holding on with that same Cade determination that had seen them all through darker days. Outside, the evening star appeared above the ranch house, the one Luke had always claimed was their mother. And keeping watch? Ready for dinner? Callie asked, gathering the journal. Mrs. Rodriguez made your father's favorite chicken and dumplings. Says Lucy needs to learn her family recipes early. Weston looked around the study one last time, at Luke's photo smiling down at them, at the family portraits showing them all together, at the journal that held their story in loving detail. Everything that mattered, preserved and protected, just as he'd promised his brother on that long-ago night. Yeah, he said softly, cradling his daughter close. Let's go home. Together they walked toward the kitchen's golden light where family and legacy waited to welcome them, just as they always had at Red River Ranch.